Hi everyone, hope that you all are doing well. I was getting a lot of queries regarding Spring Security, that how to implement basic authentication and authorization using Spring 3.0. So today we'll be understanding and coding a small example using Spring Security 6 basic authentication and authorization. But before we jump into the video's context, I would like to request you all, please support the channel by liking and sharing the video among your friends. And if you are landing for the first time on my channel, please support by subscribing and pressing the bell icon. So let's go to the IDE and let's start that. Let's first understand that there is always a update that is given on Spring Security as well when the Spring version is being changed. So the same way, when we let me create a new project, and let me tell you that let's go and create a new project, and let's say Spring Starter project. So here you'll be when I'll select the project, like I'll name the project as Spring Security 6 implementation, right? So Spring Security 6 implementation, and let me keep the packages same: com.codewithraman.implementation, com.codewithraman.implementation, and let's the Java version be 21, right? So let's go on the next screen, and now here you can see that the Spring Boot version is 3.3.3, right? So if we can define the version of Spring as 3.0 plus, right? So it's now above 3.0. So whenever the Spring version is being changed, there is a update in all the inner components of the Spring. So same way, when we say that we have jumped from Spring 2.0 to 3.0, so there is a change in the Spring Security version as well. So there are new methods that are being introduced that you will have to write in your Spring Security file to enable the security, basic authentication and authorization for your application, right? So the same way, on every version change, there are changes in the underlying dependencies and implementation of those dependencies, right? So if we select Spring Boot version 3.3.3 and I want to implement a small project, basically a in-memory kind of a login project, wherein I'll be implementing Spring Security and I would have to have a Spring Web, right? So I'll require only these dependencies, as I'll be coding a very small example to make you understand that what all changes have been done in the Spring Security, right? So these are the two dependencies that we want in our project. Let me import the project. So my project is imported, right? Let me go to the pom.xml and let's see the dependencies that we have added. So you can see that we have the Spring Security dependency, right? And also we have the Spring Web dependency, right? So these two dependencies we have added in our project as we are coding a very small example. So let's go into the package structure and let's create the security config class first, right? So let me go to Java and let me first create a package. That is config package, right? So I have a config package. Now in this config package, I have to create a Spring Security class, right? So let me say Spring Security class, Spring Security, right? First of all, we have to mark this as a configuration, so we'll say @configuration. We are marking this as @configuration to tell the Spring that this is a bean that you have to take care of. So we have marked this as configuration, right? So now first we are actually creating an application where we'll be using the in-memory users only, right? So I'm not going on the database right now. We'll be dealing with the in-memory users, and I'll be telling you that if the users have different roles and how the access to different controllers could be managed, right? So it would be a like basic authentication and authorization. Further, I'll also implement JWT in some other video with Spring Security 6, right? And again OAuth 2 also, right? So let's code. Let me say public. I'll say user detail service, user detail service. Let me code an example. I'll be creating a simple user, that is in-memory user. I have to mark this as @bean to tell that this is a Spring bean, right? And the life cycle again would be managed by Spring itself. So we'll say user details. We'll have an object of user details. Let's say user1, and let's say user dot with username. Let's say the username, we take it as a user, right? Dot with, sorry, dot password dot password, right? And here we have to take some password encoder, right? So we'll be encoding the password and then only we'll be storing the data, right? We have to use some password encoder here, but before that we will have to define a password encoder as well, right? So let me define a password encoder. I'm just simply simple coding is being done here, right? So we have already done these things. So let me say password encoder, and we'll be returning new bcrypt password encoder, right? Now in the password we have to use password encoder dot encode, and we'll pass the password. So let me pass the password of user as password, right? And then we'll say dot roles. So for the user role we'll be giving the role as user. So let me say user, and then we'll say dot build, right? So this will build our user having the role user, right? Now I want a user with a role admin as well. So let me define another user. Let's say user2 equal user dot with username as admin, and we need the password, and we pass the password encoder. We'll say encode the password of password encoder, and we'll say admin 123 with the roles as admin dot build, right? So we have created two users, one with the role user and one with the role admin, right? So two users have been created with the role one with the role user, one with the role admin. Now we can simply say return in memory user details manager, and we'll pass user1 comma, we did not use the keyword new, so we'll have to use the keyword new. So now in the Spring Security, this thing remains the same, right? So we have already implemented by creating in-memory users, right? And we have said that these are two in-memory users. You have to keep it in the memory. One user username as user, password as password, and the other one as admin, and the password as admin123, right? And we have defined the different roles as well. Then we have the password encoder to encode the password, right? So the main part of the configuration is that we have to write the filter chain method. So we have to create a bean, right? We have to create a bean of filter chain method. Let me say public security filter chain. We'll say security filter chain, and we have to pass HTTP security HTTP, right? So this is the method, right? So it is saying to add the return statement. We'll do it, right? So here in the filter chain method, basically we have to write that what how our application flow would work, right? So if I have a, let's suppose I have a URL that is /x and /y. So I have to define that which user has which access, right? So if I say that the user can only access the /x URL, and admin can only access /y URL. So for that I have to define a configuration so that it is being understood by my Spring application that these are the URLs that are specific to these different users, right? The roles of that users, right? So if the person having a user role is accessing URL X, then the access should be provided. If if a user having user role as user and trying to access the URL Y, then the access should be denied, right? Or it should be forbidden, right? So we have to write the HTTP, we have to write the security filter chain method. So here how we'll be writing this filter chain security, that we'll be say http.csrf, csrf.disable. We have disabled the CSRF code, right? So now our that session CSRF code won't be generated or won't be governed basically, right? And then we are saying that authorize HTTP request. We are saying auth.request matcher. You might be remembering that there was a method called as ant matcher. When we did a previous video of authorization and authentication, the link would be in the I button. You can go and check it out. So in that you go and see that we have used ant matcher method. So that ant matcher has been replaced now by request matcher, right? And then what we are saying that request matcher slash user, and after slash user anything that comes has a role of user, then only give the access. If a request matcher slash admin, anything after slash admin having role admin, then only give the access. Otherwise the access is denied, right? So simply any request.authenticate, and then we are saying http basic.customizer with default, right? And then we are building the HTTP properties. So this is my Spring Security configuration that you can write when using Spring Security 6 with Spring Boot 3.0, right? So this is a basic kind of security that we have written. You can make it vast, right? Same way in the upcoming videos, I'll also try and implement the JWT with Spring Security 6, right? So now I have written the security part, right? And if you go by the security part, I am saying that any request that want to access slash user and anything after that, but the user should has a role as user, then only we'll give the access. Same way, if any user accessing slash admin and anything after that and having a role admin, then only we'll give the access. Otherwise the access would get denied, right? So now to test this out, let's create a controller package and let's create two controllers, right? So let me create a package called as controller, right? And in the controller I'll create one controller as user controller, right? And the other controller as slash, let me say class, we'll say admin controller, right? Admin controller, right? So what we have to do is we have to write some calls, right? So let me write a get call. Let me say get mapping, and we'll say slash user slash hello, right? And we'll say public, and we have to return string, and we'll say hello user, right? And we have to return a simple string output, hi user with role user, right? So this is my output that I'll be giving whenever a user is trying to hit this particular URL, right? Let's go and let me first copy this method. Let me just copy this method. Let me save this. Let's go to the admin controller and let me create the same method here in the admin controller, and replacing the user I'll say admin, right? And here also I'll say admin and the user role as admin, right? So whenever the user with the role admin is trying to hit slash admin hello, the output would be shown. Otherwise, if a user is having role as user and trying to hit this URL, then the request would get forbidden, right? So the no output would be shown to that user, right? So now let's test this application. Let's go to the main class. Let me go to the main class and let me run the code, right? So let me just simply go and run the code. So we are not using database here, we are simply using the in-memory data, in-memory users. We have created some in-memory users, right, and we'll be dealing with those, right. So my application has started, right. So application has started. Let me go to the browser and let me try and use the users, right. So let me go on to the browser. Let me go on to the URL localhost slash, let's say, user, and let's say hello, right. So it says that you have to sign in with the user, right. So if I input a user input as admin, and let me go and check the password. What was the password? So the password was admin123. So let me put the password as admin123. The request should get forbidden, right. So the request shouldn't be accessed. The admin, we are putting the credentials of admin and we are accessing the URL of a user. So the request should get forbidden. So let me just sign in. So you can see the request is forbidden, right. So forbidden 403 means that you don't have access to use this URL, right. You're trying to access a different URL, right. So now if I let me reload the browser. Now again, if I say that I want to access user and say hello, it will ask me credentials. Let me put the credential as user, and what was the password of the user? It was password, right. So let me input password. Oh, it is showing 404 because let's go to the controllers. The biggest mistake I have done is that I haven't marked them as a controller. So I should have marked them as a controller. Let me say REST controller, and let me again say REST controller, right. So let me save it, let me close the application, and let me run the application again, and I'll have to refresh the browser too. So my application has started. Yes, application has started. Let me go to the browser again and let me type in localhost 8080, and I have to say user slash hello, right. And if I input the user credential, that is user, and password as password, so it will give me access of user, right. Same way, if I try and access this URL, let me go to the incognito window, let me say this, and if I input admin and the password as admin123, so it will say forbidden. The request is forbidden as you don't have access to this URL. So let me close the browsers again and let me start again. And now if I say that I want to go to localhost 8080 slash user, slash admin slash hello, and now if I input the credentials of user again, user, and then the password as password, the access should be forbidden, right. So the access is forbidden. Same way, if I go to the incognito again and if I say localhost 8080 and we say admin slash hello, right, and if I give the credentials of admin and admin123, so the access is provided. Hi admin with the role admin, right. So this was it from this video, that we have learned to implement the Spring Security 6 basic authentication and authorization. Hope you people like, share and comment on the videos, and if new to the channel, please subscribe and press the bell icon. Hope to see you in the next video. Till then, happy learning.